Hey there. So it's Kiva. I'm back again this week with a different take on this vlog. I want to really talk about and start to dig into a book that I'm currently reading, which is Who Not How, Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. So the reason I want to dig into this because this is my second time going through this book. The first time that I went through it was via Audible, and it obviously was a very fascinating read. I'm currently going through it again as a part of a larger group of entrepreneurs, and it's a book discussion. So it's an interesting, if you know anything about neuroscience, when you're listening to something, obviously it settles into your brain differently than when you're actually visually reading it. So there are very few books that I find are that compelling that I need to read more than once, but this is definitely one of them. And I first became acquainted with Dan Sullivan, who is from Strategic Coach, and you may have heard me talk about his Clarity Days. And it's kind of, Gino Wickman talks about it, and Gino got it from Dan, I believe. So it's really taking this time to go away from your business and into a different surrounding and setting, whether that's a park or somewhere else. You know, those ideas that we often need to have as CEOs aren't going to normally come to us when we're in the confines of our work environment. So taking the time to actually step out of that environment and see what you're doing, what you're thinking about, where your thoughts kind of go and land is super important. So, and then with Dr. Hardy, I first became acquainted with him with his another book he wrote called Personality Isn't Permanent. And it really looks at personality tests like Myers-Briggs, for example, and just how sometimes those can put people into a box that they tend to stay in. The reality is, as we grow and we evolve and we learn new things, or hopefully we do, we actually see that our personality can change, and what we might have been described as or defined as does not stay with us for the entirety of our lives. So that's just a really kind of quick background there. And this book is really special to me also for another reason, because many of you know I'm a mom, and my son happened to be in the car with me one time when I was listening to this book on Audible. And this has only happened twice. Typically, when I go to Audible, both of my kids are like AirPods in. We're not listening to what she's going to listen to. This time was different. I ran in, I think, to go pick up takeout. It was obviously during COVID. And he stayed in the car, and he listened while it was still playing. And he listened, obviously. And then he actually continued to listen on the whole way home. And he was like, what is that book? I need to finish that and finish listening to it. And that's only happened twice. The other book that happened with was Atomic Habits by James Clear. I actually listened to that one as well. So this book holds a special place in my heart. And I say all that to say, though, because it is chock full of so much goodness. And when you start to really break out the who's and the how's and what it actually can mean for you in your life, it can be life-changing. So the subtitle is The Formula to Achieve Bigger Goals Through Accelerating Teamwork. So with that being the case, let's dig in. And the book is actually divided into 4 areas of freedoms. So there's freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of relationship, and freedom of purpose. So those are the 4 freedoms. And it's interesting that he starts with freedom of time, because freedom is a word I think that is used a lot when people describe their core values, especially in the online space. They came into this online space for freedom, and that can be defined in many different ways. Obviously, here we've talked about time, money, relationships, and purpose. But what's interesting is sometimes we want the freedom that's associated with the money before we've actually conquered and mastered freedom of time. So, when you're talking about freedom of time, or when Dr. Hardy's talking about freedom of time, it's like whose, those are people, create abundance and self-expansion. Okay? And a lot of what takes place if you start to really dig into what it's like and why we collaborate with other people, typically it's because they possess something, whether it's access, knowledge, funding that we do not have access to ourselves. And that's something that we need to get to that next place that we're trying to go. Excuse me. So when we're thinking about this, he says on page 29 that the power of having a who, you instantly get access to knowledge, insights, resources, and capabilities that are not currently available to you. Okay? So when you're thinking about, say a problem arises in your business, how do I get this landing page built? Okay, that's a really linear, slow process. Because you might think to yourself, okay, I want this landing page built in Funnel Gorgeous. That means I need to know this, and I need to then create this, and then I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do that, so forth, so on, etc. Whereas who is non-linear, so we're not in that straight line anymore. It's instantaneous, and it can be exponential. Think about that for a minute. How? Who? Okay? It gets you there faster when you have a who, rather than thinking of things from the how perspective. So if you flip that question previously on its head, who can I get to build this landing page in Funnel Gorgeous? You freed up yourself in terms of time. Now, let's be honest. You have not freed up yourself in terms of money. Because in order to get that who, you're going to have to pay for that who. Okay? And so we'll get into that in a moment. But when you're thinking about it, he says freedom of time is not fixed, but flexible. It's not finite, but infinite. You never reach a place where you can improve your freedom of time because it isn't solely about having all the time to do what you want. It also involves using your time on increasingly quality activities. So if we go back to our example and you were with how to get that landing page built, okay, is that a quality activity for you as the CEO of your business? That's a question that oftentimes we don't ask ourselves. Is it something that needs to get done? Check, check. Yes, it is. But is it that you are the one who needs to do it? Is that the quality activity that you should be engaged in as a CEO? Yeah, that's something to definitely consider. Whereas who can help you get this done gets you to that person who they figure out the how, and your time is now freed up for what? Quality activities in your business. Okay, so we all have the same 24 hours in a day. We all have the same 365 days in a year, 366 if it's a leap year. Okay, so I don't possess or have access to any additional time than you do. You don't possess or have access to any additional time than I do. How we choose to spend that time is where those differences occur. You know, we can take Steve Jobs, for example. One of the things that he did, he wore the same thing almost every single day. Why? Because to avoid decision fatigue and to really get onto what was important in his day, he got up, t-shirt, jeans. if you made that decision that much simpler, it's one less thing that you're thinking about, and it's less time that you've spent on something, I won't say inconsequential, because obviously being clothed is important, but it's not something that should probably occupy as much time as it does for some. And I may be talking to the women more so than men. Okay? So, Dr. Hardy speaks of a person, Richie, in the book, who uses the acronym for time. Today is my everything. TIME. Today is my everything. And when you're thinking about that, let's be honest. COVID has taught us, life has taught us, tomorrow isn't promised. We really need to be mindful of how we spend our time. What do we do with that time? And if we truly want freedom of time, what does it take to have that happen in our lives? What does that look like? To have time to spend on increasingly quality activities. What does that look like? All right. So, one thing that I find in my role as a fractional COO and director of operations is that for some people, when it comes time to partnering with a who, there are two things that I see. The first is they're really not ready yet. Their why is not strong enough. Okay. And if your why is not strong enough, you're not going to be serious about partnering with a who. In our previous example, when you don't have a strong why, you will enroll in courses to learn Funnel Gorgeous. You will purchase courses to learn how to copywrite. You will purchase Canva or something else to create graphics. You want it done. You know that you need it done. But your why for getting it done is so not pressing enough that you want to have someone else, a who, do it for you. And you might think, well, Kiva, you're right, because I don't have the money to pay for that who. And my counter to that is, are you sure? Are you absolutely sure you don't? Because what typically happens is in our DIY methodology, we have paid out for courses on funnels, copywriting, this software, the this, the that, the graphics that go on. And that money that you've spent, if you add it up, could you have afforded someone to do it for you? And in less time. It's not because you know how to do something. And there's a part in the book, and I don't want to misquote it, but pretty much every capability that you have does not need to be explored. Okay? As an entrepreneur, you're probably worn many hats throughout the duration of your business, throughout the duration of your life. Just because you know how to do a funnel doesn't mean that you need to be the one to do the funnel at this point in time in your business. Okay, so that's one area that typically does come up, is that your why is just not, you're not serious enough. You come and you say, I need consulting. I know what I think I need to do, but once again, you're not wanting that linear process. You're wanting that explosive process, that instantaneous, that let's jump to it, okay? And you're like, I need to tap into your brain in order to have that happen. We have our discovery call, we chit chat, we're seeming like everything is honky-dory. And then it's like, oh, well, maybe I could do this instead. Or maybe I could do this instead. And all the maybes start coming up. And what happens is a month to 3 months go by. And the progress that you've made in your business, it's small. You've gone from this step on the linear line to this step. You want it to go to that step. And a who could have gotten you to that step in that same time frame, but you've moved from here to here. And typically, why that happens is related to the second reason that I see, which is you look at that investment in a who as a cost. You don't view it as an investment because you don't realize that by investing in a who, you are actually investing in yourself. I know, that was a mic drop moment. I'll repeat it for you. By investing in a who, you are actually investing in yourself. I can run it back. Investing in a who is you investing in yourself. Because once again, we go back to time freedom. That investment in that who, whomever that might be on your team, or whomever it might be that you need to be the who in your life, that is an investment in yourself. In the book, Dr. Hardy shares an example of podcast bookings for his book that I mentioned, Personality Isn't Permanent. Previously, in his other book prior to that one, which I can't recall right now, he booked all the podcasts himself. Let's be honest, we know that getting on podcasts is huge for like getting the word out for our book, right? So he booked himself on all these podcasts. But he had a goal when he put out Personality Isn't Permanent. His goal was to be on 200 podcasts. And he said, I could spend the time booking myself on those podcasts, but I don't think it's the best use of my time. So he hired someone. His assistant hired someone who not only got him on 200 podcasts, he said, hey, if we get on 600, I'll throw in a bonus. Yes, the bonus was money. It was a monetary bonus. But you would have struggled to get on 200 by yourself. Here was someone who was not only going to get you on 200, but 600 quality podcasts. And you only needed to show up, like wake up in the morning, check your calendar, see where you needed to be, and then show up for the podcast to talk about the book that you wrote. So it's not like you needed a ton of prep, right? But that's because he didn't look at it as simply a cost for this person. They weren't just a budget line item that was staff or that was just cost. It was an investment. Because the amount of money he invested in this person and the amount of time it saved him allowed him to do other things that were what? Increasingly quality activities. So I do believe that I will probably circle back and dig into this some more. So we'll just call this one part 1. But I do want you to think about that as a business owner. And I've seen it. I've seen it with CEOs. I have seen it where team is a cost. Okay? They're not. They're an investment. And that investment in them is actually an investment in yourself. And you have to make that shift, because if you don't make that shift, you're going to be wanting that freedom of money when you haven't mastered the freedom of time. And by mastering freedom of time, you're going to do what? Make more money. Because if you're not the one booking yourself on the podcast and you're only having to show up for the podcast, you actually have more reach to sell more whatever it is that you're selling. We'll go with books. to sell more books, which is going to help you make more money. And you still have time back and freedom of time because you didn't spend all the time booking yourself on all the podcasts. So I'm going to stop there because I feel that was quite a few nuggets. Let me know if you agree. And I do want that thought to start to marinate, that investing in your team is an investment in yourself. And when you start to look at it in that way, you might hopefully start to look at your team investment differently, because you're actually investing in yourself. And how many of us would actually bet well on ourselves? So again, the book is Who Not How by Dan Sullivan with Dr. Benjamin Hardy. I want you to go ahead and check it out. Leave me some comments telling me what you think. Have you read it? Do you have who's in your life? Are you looking for some who's in your life? Are you trying to accomplish freedom of time? Are you looking for freedom of money before you've mastered freedom of time? Let me know. And I'll hope you tune in next time for part 2 as we dig a little deeper. Bye.